Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I want to make things easy. Plants vs. Zombies Heroes is a game that I have been playing a lot of lately, and I got the bright idea to completely redo the budget meta in this game. Importantly, these new meta evolutions make Squeezy's deck building guide outdated, so we're just going to go over some of the basic principles for our new PvZH deck building, and we're going to show off some of our best budget decks. Everything in this video is subject to change, so make sure to keep your eye out on the budget database in the PvZH Discord server, link in the description. Also, if you're interested in testing new decks for the budget meta, join the budget tournament testing server, link also in the description. With that out of the way, let's get right into the video. So to start, I think it's important to make clear what a number of terms mean in this game. I'll be as broad as possible as to not alienate anyone. Budget, a deck that requires very few resources to make. Usually they'll be composed of entirely uncommons and rares. Sometimes they'll have a few super rares. These are usually divided up into 5k, 5000, and 10k, 10,000 spark categories. Maxed, more expensive decks that have access to any of the cards to make the most powerful deck possible. Meta, the most powerful or most common strategy in use. Ladder, the ranked mode of the game. It's named after the idea of climbing the ladder. Sparks, the currency for crafting cards. Gems are used to buy packs, sparks are used to buy cards. Mana, a general term for sun or brains. You use mana to play cards. Tempo, the power level of your field. If you have stronger or more minions than your opponent, you have more tempo. Value, the amount that a play actually contributes towards winning the game. Usually, depending on what stage of the game a card is played, it will have different value. For example, you may want to keep an applesaucer in your hand on turn 5, since the next turn it will gain strike through, meaning it has more value. Getting more value than your opponent means that you can get a better trade. Win condition, your exact method or card that does 20 damage to your opponent. Aggro, midrange, and control. These terms describe how fast the deck wins. Aggro decks win the fastest, usually around turn 4 or 5. Midrange decks are a little slower, usually winning around turn 6 to 8. And control decks are slower than that, usually winning around turn 7 or later. Combo. A deck strategy built around using one or a few specific interactions to gain a lot of value. Alright, now that we hopefully all understand what we're talking about, it's time to understand strategy with pack opening. There are 6 types of packs that you can open. These are the premium packs, the galactic packs, the colossal packs, the triassic packs, the hero unlock packs, and the hero card pool packs. If you want to get cards fast, it's important to understand the values of each pack. Both hero packs are really bad picks, since they give you much less value for the amount that you spend on them. You should never buy either type. Triassic packs are generally not a great pick since they have a bad card pool similar to Premium, but unlike Premium, they don't even give heroes to make them worth it ever. The 3 packs that you can decide between getting are Premium packs, which have some essential cards and can give you heroes, but have a very low card quality. Galactic, which have very good cards, especially on the zombie side, and the best pool of uncommons. And Colossal, which has several of the best budget cards in the game, the best rares in the game, and the highest overall quality of cards, especially for plants. In general, I'd recommend buying single colossal packs until you have 3 or more of either Tricorn, Elderberry, Blob, or Cro-Magnolia. After that, start mixing in galactic packs, going back and forth until you have your first deck. From there, go ahead and buy whatever packs you think will help you the most, and once you have your first deck set up, always buy multi-packs instead of singles. Also, keep an eye out if you get any of these cards. If you recycle them, you get 4 times as many sparks as you would normally get for a card of their rarity. If you have a Briar Rose or Valkyrie in your collection, recycling it could give you all the sparks you need to make a deck. And in case you're wondering, Colossal packs benefit the most from these recycle differences, so buy those if you're just looking for sparks. One last thing, if you really are just beginning, you will have the option to choose between 4 plant starter heroes and 4 zombie starter heroes. In total, you'll only be able to choose 2 of them though. In general, it actually doesn't matter which path you choose, as long as you don't choose both of the first heroes. Basically, don't choose Solar Flare and Spadao, and don't choose Smash and Boogaloo. Otherwise, you can take whichever path you want. In general, choosing Spadao into Chompzilla and Boogaloo into Rust Bowl is slightly better, but it really doesn't matter a whole ton, so really just pick whichever path you find more fun. Alright, now I'm going to explain to you how to build your own decks. The first most important part of the process of deck building is to understand what exactly you're trying to achieve. There are two main goals that a deck can have. Either it can be trying to have a certain general game plan, for instance burn, tempo, or value, and that's the most common type, but it can also be built around some combo that you want to pull off, or some card that you want to build around. A good example of the first type is Boogaloo Burn. In this deck, every single card contributes in some way towards dealing damage to your opponent. Conversely, some decks are combo decks. For example, the current most powerful budget deck, Blob Combo, centers its entire strategy around the Zomblob. Every card either draws cards, stalls for time to pull off this expensive combo, provides a target for the blob, or helps the blob actually hit the opponent. Now, not every deck has to fit into one of these types. Some decks are a combination of the two, having a combo but also a more general goal. The last piece of advice that I have to give is extremely important, and that's simply to do testing. Experiment around with stuff. There's so much strategy that still hasn't been done yet in this game. Play games with your experiments to see what works and what doesn't. Contrary to what it looks like many PvZH YouTubers do, you shouldn't expect your deck to be finished being built right when you make it. Testing is extremely important in every strategy game, so mess around with stuff. For an example, let's look at the old most powerful budget deck, Boogaloo Burn. For many years, we assumed that this deck was the best possible budget strategy, but now after actually taking the time to test out more cards, we've realized that this list had a decent amount of optimizations to do. It's very easy to think that your deck is good enough, but there's usually a way to improve, even if only a little. Take notes of what goes well and what doesn't to make it the best deck you can. In general, a good rule of thumb is that if you haven't played at least 10 games with your deck, you probably don't understand it well enough to say it's finished. For the best decks in the game, testing will often consist of many more games. Alright, now we're going to show off a few decks that we think are the absolute best for starting out. If you don't see your 10 times ticket boost hero here, don't worry, you can always ask in the Plants vs Zombies Heroes Discord server for a deck custom made for your set of cards. The first deck on this list is Boogaloo Burn. This is an aggro deck, meaning the goal is to do as much damage to your opponent as possible. In general, this is one of the easiest decks to actually use, and it's quite powerful. This deck will easily carry you through Gold League, and should be able to help you get through some of Diamond League as well. This is also one of the cheapest decks in this list. If you have Boogaloo and are new to the game, this deck is a great craft. Additionally, there's a very similar deck for Infinity. This deck isn't as strong, but it's definitely an option if you have him. Infinity has the benefit of being really smart to upgrade, meaning it's a good idea to take this budget deck and to slowly buy more expensive cards to work up to this deck. For this reason, Infinity is quite a good hero to invest in. He's very powerful with a few more sparks. Next on the list, Aggro Solar Flare. This deck is pretty decent, and definitely has the most testing of any of the decks here. This is definitely the weakest deck on the list here, but I can say from experience that this deck can bring you to Ultimate League if you try hard enough. In general, this deck will be most effective until Diamond League. The fourth deck to discuss is for Chompzilla. This deck is quite powerful for a budget deck, but a bit more expensive than the other decks so far. In this deck, you build up your tempo in the first few turns while setting up a combo with Elderberry or Vegetation Mutation. This deck has a lot of late game, so you'll usually have some win condition come into your hand frequently. For the last two decks, the power level of these are much higher, but these aren't heroes that you start with. This means that you can only make these decks if you happen to find one of these heroes in premium multi-packs. The first one is Midrose. There are two decks on the screen, showing the cheaper version and the slightly more expensive version of this deck. Both are extremely powerful for their cost. Budget Midrose wins the same way as Chompzilla's deck, but this time there are even more late game cards to draw. This means that a good chunk of your deck has the power to win the game on its own. Budget Midrose is all about combos, playing cards together in ways that make them more powerful. Because of this, it can be difficult to use this deck when just starting out, so definitely ask for tips and use YouTube to see how other players play this deck. Finally, we have Immorticia Blob Combo, the most powerful budget deck, but also the hardest to use. Both the Rose deck and the Immorticia deck can get you to Ultimate League, but both require a decent amount of skill at the game to play right, especially this deck. For Blob Combo, your goal is to stall for time until you're able to develop a powerful blob or helicopter that can do most of the damage needed to win in one turn. This deck prioritizes value over tempo, so don't play cards just because you can. Always hold them in your hand until they are most effective. So, to recap on everything, choose the focus point of your deck, make sure that you don't have too much early game or late game, have 10 to 13 unique cards per deck, and experiment around to make the best list that you can. If you're just beginning your journey in PvZH, make sure to get involved with the community. If you're more experienced and are interested in taking the budget meta further, you can join us in the budget testing server. If you want a good deck to start grinding ranked mode, the decks we've provided are your best bet. Thank you for watching, I hope you've learned something, and goodbye.